Hello, everybody. How are y'all doing? Good. Thanks for asking. Some bad storms, huh? Came through. Some loud thunder. Felt like I was back home or something. Don't hear too many. I mean, we don't get a lot of thunderstorms in the mountains, do we? I mean, yeah, okay. I guess you guys do. Like down in Florida, it's like probably like all the time, right? It's a little different, but it's almost nice to hear the thunder roll like that, but then you don't want to go get too crazy. Okay. Well, we survived the storm. Glad you're here. Glad to see those who are here tonight. And this is good. This is good. We should be together as much as possible. All right. First Peter, chapter number 5, and we went through an entire verse last class, and we'll see if we can get through. Let's shoot for 5, verse 5 tonight, maybe. So, can anyone tell me, give me a one word? What's the context of this passage, 1 through 5?
Shepherding.
Okay, shepherding, specifically those who do the shepherding, right? Okay, so we talked a lot about about Peter from verse number 1, and then a little bit about him being an elder. And what he does in verse 2 and 3, so he's addressing the leadership. I think we've established, and we're good, that he addressed leadership in a congregation who would be expected to have elders, because that's the way God seems, we go through the New Testament, that's the way God designed the church. Every congregation would have some leadership, and they would be considered elders, and then we know the qualifications for men to do that are in 1 Timothy 3, Titus 1, and we're going to go through some, what most people call qualifications, and there's another word, starts with a Q, I think, maybe Dean can help me out, because I know some like, well, let's not call them qualifications, let's call them blah, 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 something else. Do you know the word? It starts with a Q. Okay, qualities, yeah. So the qualities that kind of describe the character of a man instead of qualifying him for a business position kind of thing. Yeah, maybe qualities are a better way to look at it. All right, and so he's going to give a few of these in 2 and 3. And so any study of an elder or the eldership would want to include, these, at least these first 4 verses of 1 Peter 5. And so what he does here, he's going to talk about how to lead, basically. How leading should go within a congregation, within the Lord's church. He's not going to give the details on what exactly elders should be doing in their leading. He doesn't go into that, nor does he really give details about how does a man get into the position, He doesn't talk about that. And we can talk about that if you want, but this is not what he's talking about. And maybe he doesn't go into the exact details and walk an eldership or leadership step by step by step. He doesn't do that because if we look at it as shepherds and flocks, because every flock is different, right? So let's say we're a flock here of the Lord's church, and with Jesus being the chief shepherd, right? That's in verse number 4. And then, and our dynamic is going to be how our makeup is going to be different than, let's say, let's just take it really far away. A flock in Texas, or a flock in Montana, or a flock in New York. The makeup of the sheep, the makeup of the flock are going to be a little different. And so the leadership, it's not going to, an elder from Middle Tennessee or Northeast Tennessee is probably might not translate very well to an eldership in Canada. or something like that. Does that make sense? Kind of. So the makeup of each congregation is going to be different. So that's why he's saying, look, here's how to do it. He gives an overall. Here's how to lead, not so much the details. Okay. Now in the King James, he says, well, let's read 2 and 3. Shepherd the flock of God, or feed the flock of God, which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly. All right. So you see the word shepherd, which it means feed. So the King James puts the word feed there. It's the word for shepherd. It's the word poimeno. Look that up. It's a verb, and so it means to tend to. And so you get the idea of feeding. And of course, we're supposed to be getting in our heads the picture of a shepherd taking care of the flock, right, and feeding the flock. So that's the verb, shepherd. Do this thing. Act this way with the flock of God. The noun of that word, poimen, is usually in the Bible in the New Testament translated as shepherd, and you're going to see it one time as pastor. It's translated into English one time as pastor. That's Ephesians 4 and verse 11. And so what does that make a pastor? That makes a pastor an elder. Okay? A pastor could do, and I know what people call each other, call preachers and stuff nowadays is pastor. I get called pastor all the time. I'm totally not offended by it. I get it. I get how. I get why I'm called that. I was even called reverend one time, and hold up a second. That's reserved only for God in the Bible, reverend. That was my aunt. She meant so well by it too, but I am not that. So, and I am not. So, for example, let's just take me as an example. I'm not a pastor because I'm not a poimen. I'm not a shepherd, and I don't shepherd the flock in this particular way as an elder would. Does that make sense? So, can a preacher, can it be, in Ephesians 4 and verse 11, you have right next to the word pastor, I think it's right next to it, it's evangelist. Well, I guess if my position, my role in this congregation falls under anything, it would probably be the evangelist. Or and in that passage, there's teachers. Ephesians 4:11 says, and he himself gave some to be apostles, prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, and teachers. That ought to tell you right away that there is a distinction between pastors and evangelists. So not every evangelist is a pastor, and not every teacher is a pastor. Not every pastor is going to be an evangelist or a minister. Just the bringer or the giver of good news. So right away, there's a distinction there. Any questions about that? This is good to know. That little word appointment. Pastor only appears once, and like I said, I don't think someone's going to go to hell and lose their soul because they call me a pastor. I'm sorry, I just don't. I'm not. I mean, we're not going to. I'm not ready to. Wait. Split that kind of hair. But I do think it makes really good sense that if I'm going to call myself a New Testament Christian, I want to speak the way the Bible speaks. Go ahead.
No, that's not saying you couldn't be one if you the church chose you.
Yeah, let's say for some reason
you couldn't do it. You are preaching.
Mm-hmm. And I know brethren who are they're the preacher, and then they're also serve as an elder, and so technically they would be a pastor. Yeah.
You wouldn't say you couldn't be, but you could qualify.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's.
Well, you know what I'm saying. You could be.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, so I didn't want to spend too much time on that, but it's good to bring it up since we're on it. Okay, so what I say, the imagery is being painted for us is the shepherd and his flock, and This goes all the way back into Israel's history. And I do think that the reason why that leaders are called elders in the New Testament in the Lord's church stems from the way it was used from this imagery from the Old Testament. So you have, can you name me any shepherds in the Old Testament? Any shepherds in the Old Testament at all? Okay, Amos, David, yeah, Moses. I mean, he probably was, right? Like he's in the wilderness. I mean, what was he doing? What was he doing out there for 40 years? What's that?
He's one that was lost. I mean,
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, right. Mainly two names are going to come up as usually Amos and it's usually David. David's probably number one.
Over people, but over animals.
Yeah, I'm talking about actually over actual shepherds, like literal shepherds.
Oh, okay.
Moses was in the wilderness for 40 years. I don't think it's a stretch to say that he was one. But most people don't bring Moses up. But he did shepherd in that way the people, though, right? Most people are going to say David. I mean, David's famous. What's his most famous song? The Lord. Okay, yeah, the shepherd song, whatever, however you want to call it. Yeah, the Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. All right. And David is usually referred to as the shepherd king. And of course, he wrote the most well-known psalm there is. And then in the New Testament, who called himself a shepherd? Yes, whoever said that, I heard it, waft over it. Actually, he didn't just call himself the shepherd, he called himself the what shepherd? The good shepherd. And can you tell me what book that's in? And can you tell me what chapter that's in? No. John 10. All right, John 10. And actually, he does it in a number of different ways, all the way through, like for the first 30 verses of John 10, he's kind of talking about that. And so doesn't it make sense? So you get this really prominent idea in the Old Testament, and here comes Jesus, and he's applying the imagery to himself. And then naturally, well, it makes total sense that the New Testament authors, of course, guided by the Holy Spirit, would apply that image to church leadership, right? It's just like a very natural, like what else would you call it, right? Makes total sense. And so whatever we know, we might not know much about shepherding. Probably don't know the details about it. There's a really good little tiny book. Apparently it's a very well-known book. I don't even know what it's called. I can picture it. It's a tiny book, and it's on Psalm 23. It's something about a shepherd, or a shepherd's look at Psalm 23 or something like that. Anyways, if you're interested, I'll get you the author of it. But it goes into some details about what a Middle Eastern shepherd would go through, and he matches it up to Psalm 23 and Jesus himself. And so it's really neat. So you might, if you wanted to have a little inside look at what a shepherd would do over there, then that'd be a good little book to pick up. I might even have it in my office there. But so whatever we can picture, I think even though we're kind of removed from that part of the world and from that kind of time, I think we do, when we're not dumb, so I think we can get a good idea of what an actual shepherd does and maybe walk through a day of a shepherd in our minds. And so whatever you think, whatever you can picture an actual shepherd doing that would promote the well-being of his flock, that is exactly what an elder should be doing for the congregation that he is over. Whatever it is. The picture, the model is a literal shepherd and his sheep. That's the model. The model is not, eldership should not run things like a business. I'm not even sure if you could say they should even run things in that sense. But it's not a business. One writer said this, and I thought it was good, and I wanted to share it with you. He says, quote, "It is unfortunate that elders too often have found their model in the corporate board of directors rather than in the fields where the shepherds led their flocks. That's right. So if you got an eldership who's running things like a business, to me that kind of it creates too much distance between leadership and the people, and that's not right. And if you're going to run things like a business, then you should go and actually start a business and get out of the work of the leadership in the Lord's church. But instead, the model is not corporate America. The model is that lowly shepherd in the field, right? Caring for his sheep. Okay. So there's no managing. It really ought not to be like that. It should not be in the mind of an elder. You're not managing everybody or every little thing. No, you are shepherding. There's a big difference. Do y'all see that? There's a big difference there. I mean, you want to be managed by your eldership? Or would you like to be led and fed and nourished and cared for and loved and all that stuff? Okay. But I want you to note the of God. Shepherd the flock of God. The church, the congregation does not belong to an eldership. They don't belong to the eldership. Who do they belong to? God. And so this takes the idea of stewardship. You know, Christians are to be good stewards of the things that they've been blessed with or whatever has been placed under their care. We'll see that in a second. This takes the idea of stewardship to a much greater level for those who are going to serve as elders. So you're stewarding. You're not just being a steward of your material possession and things like that, or even your own family. And those things are important. But now you're talking about the people of God. You are a steward of the people of God who belong to God. That's a big deal. That's a very, very big deal. And a lot of this, I could go through here and just say stuff about every word or phrase and say, that's a big deal. That's serious. And how I've said that like 20 times. And then you get, it's not surprising why men don't really want to be elders. Why a lot of men are very scared to be elders because of the heavy responsibility that it is, which ought to make us appreciate the men who do step up even that much more. Okay. And then it says, let's see, shepherd the flock of God, which is among you, serving as overseers, or it says taking the oversight. So that's another verb, and it means it's episcopeo. That might sound a little, I hate this microphone. That might sound a little somewhat familiar. Maybe you think of an English word, episcopeo, that goes along with it. It means to oversee. Now, the noun of that Greek word is episcope, and that is translated as bishop. And that is something that's in 1 Timothy 3 and verse number 1. And of course, we know what we know bishops as are what? I mean, when I say a bishop, you think, okay, you think in the Catholic Church, right? And of course, this is where they got it from. But the way the word bishop is used in the Bible, in the New Testament, and the way a bishop in that particular denomination does things is quite different. Very, very different. Okay, so that's the word. So that's the verb, episcopeo, taking the oversight, serving as overseers. All right. How are elders, or how are, we could say, pastors, how are bishops, how are overseers, how are shepherds supposed to lead the flock? Well, it is not by barking orders at people, and it is not by being demanding. Shepherds are supposed to lead by spiritual and moral example. They set the example. If you find a group of men, give me any group of men, whether they're 2 men or they're 20 men, and those men practice what they preach, it's obvious that they know the Bible, and it's obvious that they're full of common sense, and they've got some wisdom on them, and they show compassion for people, and they care about people, then you are going to find a group of Christians, we would call a congregation, who is going to be gladly, respectfully, and gladly and happily following their lead. Give me a group of men like that, and what you're going to find, you're not going to find far behind is a group of Christians saying, yes, please, thank you very much for leading us to heaven. You find a group of men who serve as elders in name only, and then everything is just going to fall apart. What's going to happen is the sheep are going to scatter, and sheep are going to die out, and then the flock is going to dwindle, and all of a sudden, boom, you don't have a flock anymore. And of course, then you don't have any shepherds. But you give a great group of Christian men who fit the Bible, the New Testament example of elders. And you know what? When changes have to be made within a group, within a congregation, those changes are going to be agreed with, because of the amazing relationship that the leadership has with everybody else. When hard decisions have to be made, then those hard decisions will be trusted. Maybe not agreed with, or maybe not sure about that hard decision being made, but at least there ought to be some trust there when the hard decision is made. And then what you're going to find also is that the elders, the shepherds, are going to receive the encouragement from everybody and the support from everybody that they definitely need. And then what you're going to have is a nice group of people who call themselves Christians, who are members of the Lord's church, who are doing exactly and functioning exactly how the Lord God always expected them to. And it's an amazing thing. It can be, so that's your picture perfect scenario. And it can happen. It can absolutely happen. Any comments so far? All right, so look, keep going here. So you're serving as overseers or taking the oversight, not by compulsion or not by constraint, but willingly. It makes sense for anybody who's going to serve, I would say, in any leadership role, just even outside of religion, but any leadership role, and to do it effectively, the person is going to need the desire to actually do it. That makes good sense to me. The desire to serve must be there. The desire to lead must be there. Now, obviously, a congregation wants men to serve as elders because those men actually want to do it. They're actually ready to do it, not because you don't want to force men into it, right? Because then you might have some problems. You're forced to do it. You don't really like what's going on. And it's shameful, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that it's shameful that so many otherwise very qualified men, they use the desire qualification, and I'll say something to that in a second, in 1 Timothy 3:1, as an excuse not to serve. So 1 Timothy 3 and verse 1 says, this is a faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop or overseer, he desires a good work. Overseer, shepherd, overseeing the flock, shepherd, that's the elder, it's appointments, pastor, it's shepherd, it's the bishop, it's the elder. If he desires the position of a bishop, and men will say, and you read through there, and you're getting down to, all the way through 7, you're like, and this particular man is like, he just nails it. But he might say, well, I just don't desire it. I probably should, I just don't desire it. That is a shame. And I hate that happens, but I think it happens everywhere. Of course, and so I would say, well, let me say this. It could be said though that, if a man doesn't really care to be an elder, then maybe he shouldn't, maybe he's not even really fitting the other qualifications like he may seem to be on the outside. I think, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, that there is a difference between desiring to be an elder and being willing to serve as one. When I read 1 Timothy 3:1, I do not read a qualification. I don't read a quality either. I don't think that's a qualification. I don't count desire as a qualification. It just says, what does it say? It doesn't say he must. Starting in verse 2, it starts to look what he must be. Boom, 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 boom. And then verse 8, deacons must be this and that and that. But then verse 1 is just saying, look, if a man desires the position, he desires good work. Like that's an admirable thing. Then it goes into the musts. He must be this and he must be that. Can't just throw anybody in there. What I do count as a qualification or quality, I guess, is this right here where it says willingly. Or the King James might say something else. What does it say?
Willingly.
Okay, perfect. I would say that's a qualification. Would y'all agree with that?
Yeah.
What about the desire thing? Y'all agree with that one? Okay, awesome. Well, I got one or two. I think there's a difference. So, I'm sorry?
It goes hand in hand. Either way, if you don't desire it, you're not gonna do a good job. If you don't do it willingly and lovingly, you're not gonna do a good job.
Okay.
Either way, it's just not.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. And it's hard. Like, I would try to. I tell you what, if I was a member of a congregation and a man fit, as far as I would know that he fit all the qualifications to lead the congregation, and we needed an elder, and he said, no, I just don't desire it. I would probably bug him a little bit about that and try to get him to serve. And I'm going to make the case for it. I'm going to make a case for it, and before I get done here. But and I'm not going to like bug him and bug him and bug him and bug him. I'm just a little bit and push him in there and then like really coerce him into doing it. I don't want to do that because there is always the off chance that maybe because he's not desiring it, he knows something that we don't about him not meeting everything else. And of course, like I said, you don't want to force eldership. I think that's bad news. But there's a big difference, and I can see how it maybe in one sense you could say it goes hand in hand, but I think there's a big difference. And I'm gonna try to bring that out in just a second. Dean.
Well, I was just gonna say that the person who doesn't quite desire it but is willing to do it wouldn't be focused on themselves, like exalting themselves in that position. They might be more focused on trying to do the best job that they can, even though they don't quite desire to be there, but they know that their position is very important. That their desire to at least fulfill their oath or their willingness to take that position would possibly be more fruitful than some who are desiring that position, but for a dishonest gain.
So let's take two men and let's say they both fit the qualification. They're like, we could put these guys in eldership right just tomorrow. And then you have one who's kind of saying, I don't know. I mean, never really thought about it. I don't really want the position. Never really desire it. I'm not sure if I'm the right guy for it. And then this guy's over here is basically like campaigning like it's a political thing, campaigning for it. Which guy do you think would probably better serve? Probably one that's being a little more humble about it.
Like Moses.
Okay.
Responsibility. He's not only taking responsibility for his soul, he's looking over the boss. He's taking responsibility of other souls that he's going to have to answer for.
Mm-hmm.
You get mad here and complaining for it. To me, he sounds to me like he's trying to push a wet rope, but you can't push a wet rope. You can only pull a wet rope. You make it go where you want to go.
No, it's not.
He sounds like he's trying to push it rather than sleep.
Yeah, right. So let me try to explain a little bit of the difference between desiring, and maybe if I hit it, if I don't hit it all, if I don't hit it fully, then just let me know. So desiring would be like actively seeking out. And remember now, desire just, I guess maybe inherently is not wrong, because the text says, 1 Timothy 3:1 says, you know, if he desires it, he's desiring a good work. Why he's desiring it might not be, but he doesn't say that's a good thing. He just says, well, that's a good position to hold. Desiring might, you know, you're actively seeking out, actively wanting it. Maybe we would say, and this would be a wrong, campaigning for it, and of course that would be raise a red flag. But if you desire that position and you get it, you might be too emotionally invested in it, and perhaps motivated by what the role can offer. That man might see what he can get out of the role or out of the position. So I want that because maybe it would make me look better, or I don't know, maybe he thought, well, it'll just make me more faithful, which is a very, very bad idea. And then you got a person who's willing to do it. Well, a willing person would recognize just how serious the position is, that there's a need for it. He recognizes the duty involved and the responsibility, far more likely to show humility and a little bit of reluctance, like, you know, a little scenario that I gave there. And perhaps as an elder, he's open to serve in whatever way whatever it takes. And then likely the opposite to the one who might desire it for wrong reasons, wanting to get something out of the role, this man who would be willing to serve would be thinking about what he can give to the role instead of what the role can give to him. Does that make sense? So you kind of see the difference, and I like the soldier comparison. Now, I know there's crazy people out there who sign up and go into the army and the military and things like that, but let's just kind of, I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about a soldier in their right mind. I don't think any soldier in his right mind, perhaps even a soldier who has a family back home, is not desiring to be the first guy to run straight into the gunfire. But that good soldier, while he does not desire to do that, he would be willing to do that. And to me, that's a humongous difference. Huge difference. Dean brought Moses. Moses doesn't, when you first see him and God talking about getting the people out of Egypt, Moses does not seem like the man who desires to go into Egypt and talk to Pharaoh and get God's people out of there. You read Exodus 3 and 4, Moses was trying his best to get out of it. He might as well have said, I do not desire the position, God. He might as well have said that. But was he willing to do it? Moses, he was willing to do it. And then think of Jesus. When you see Jesus in Matthew 26, 38 and following, when he is praying to God, he's in the garden, he's praying to God, he does it 3 times, let this cup pass from me. I don't really see a desire to go and hang and go and suffer and get beaten and bleed out and hang on the cross and die. One of the most painful deaths that have ever existed. But was he willing to do it? Of course he was willing to do it. And so I think, when I think about those things, I can really see a big difference. But I see what Diana said about them kind of going hand in hand a little bit, but there is a huge difference. And so I don't see the desire. That's why when a man is maybe willing, or maybe he says he doesn't desire it, but he's qualified. Well, I want to know if he's willing. And so that's where I'm going to say, all right, I know what you said, and you don't want to serve for that reason, but A, B, C, X, Y, Z, here's the reasons why you should. And I want to find out if the man's willing or not. If he's willing, the man needs to serve, you know. And I think you'd find out very quickly whether he doesn't need to step into the role or not. So willing Christian men need to lead in this capacity. When good men don't step up, I think every congregation has good men, and sometimes these good men just don't, maybe in their ignorance, And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but maybe in their ignorance is why they're not serving. They have not been taught. They don't know how important the role is. But when good men don't step in to fulfill the leadership role, what it does is leave the door wide open for unqualified men to step in and take the positions, and then boom, you might as well, dig in your own grave at that point. Any comments? Okay, everybody is on board then, for the most part. Might get some phone calls after tonight. We'll see. Maybe. Okay. We got a couple minutes of, you sure you don't have that? I really don't want to get into the filthy lucre, dishonest gain thing, because I want to look and I want to actually read some other passages.
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
With desire and willingness, you want an elder to have, you want him to have the desire to be an elder.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
You don't want to, you don't want someone that's not forced.
Right.
And then it would be, he would feel like it's an obligation and not.
Yeah. It's just gonna be miserable.
Yeah.
You don't want your elders coming in dragging every Sunday or Wednesday
You
night.
want to have some enthusiasm about being an elder.
Yes.
You don't want
Yeah.
to be,
Yeah.
I'm
And that,
forced to do this.
right. And then, and I would say the rest of the congregation would just feed off of that. Maybe like dad comes home one day, or maybe it's mom. Let's just pick on dad. And dad comes home with the family, and dad's just, he's just in a bad mood. And this never happens in our house, but dad's just in a bad mood. And everybody in the family just feeds off of it. And everyone's in a great mood until dad gets home, and he's just making everybody miserable. And they just feed off of that leadership, And I think the same can happen in the church. You got an elder who's dragging his feet, just doesn't really want to be an elder, and he just makes, and then he's like, who's going to talk to me tonight about, what other problem's going to come up, or what else am I going to have to lead in, because somebody didn't show up, or what else, what's the preacher, maybe they don't have a good relationship. What's the preacher going to be getting on me about this time, or whatever it might be. Everybody's going to feed off of that negativity, and that ain't good. That's not good. I don't know how a congregation can function like that. What's that?
The opposite is true as well.
Exactly right.
An elder or a deacon or just a deacon, if you have people in general that are enthusiastic and let's go do this or let's go do that, or
Yeah.
that gets people excited too.
Right. And which is key. Yeah, this is key. So yeah, we need that. We need happy preachers, we need happy elders, we need happy deacons, we need happy people who serve on the Lord's table. Or guys come dragging up here and just with their head. I'm not saying that we do this here, but it's like the whole presentation of our leadership during our worship services is that everyone is just so miserable to be in here. Like, what a visitor might just say, no thanks. I don't think this is the place for me, even though they're preaching everything right. Let me say this real quick. Hebrews 13:17 talks about letting the elders basically do their work with joy and not with grief. Now that's on the congregation's part. Don't be bothering the elders so much or just dragging them down. But when the elder's already dragging himself down, everybody feeds on that, and they give negativity to the elder, and there's no way he can do his job with joy. And then what? You're probably getting close to where you're probably not even, maybe bad things are about to happen, and maybe moving away from the Lord's church, But okay, all right. We'll how about that? What do you think about that? I didn't even get through verse 2.
Well, I'm just glad that we have three elders that we can look up to, they're always.
Then we have good elders here.
And they're friendly and they're humble and we love all three of them.
Yeah, I second that, yeah, love all three of them. All right. Thanks for your comments, and we'll just keep this train rolling, come next Wednesday.